left my ex and I was free of that, I fell apart for a while. I
Right.
mean, I fell apart. That was when the burnout hit bottom. It wasn't until then. And I think it was because that was a point where I recognized now it's safe for me to fall apart.
Hi, friend. Welcome to the Big 4-0. I'm Stephanie McLaughlin. This is the place where we talk about a midlife turning point that no one warned you about. The very normal, often messy, always meaningful experience of transition sometime around age 40. For many of us, it's the first time we realize the life we built in our 20s and 30s doesn't quite fit anymore. The job, the relationships, even the goals we once chased start to feel off. I know that feeling well. I fought against it hard and honestly made the whole thing messier than it had to be. On this show, I talk about what happens next, how people navigate change, redefine success, and build lives that actually feel like their own. I share stories and conversations that help you make sense of what might be shifting in your life and remind you that you're not the only one figuring it out. Today, my guest is Michelle Niemeyer, a former high-achieving attorney whose body ultimately forced her to slow down and pay attention. Michelle spent decades building her life around achievement, responsibility, and self-reliance, until midlife forced her to relate to all of it differently. Her story reveals what happens when the strategies that once kept you afloat start to cost you your health. Hi, Michelle. Welcome to the show.
Hi, it's so good to finally see you
I
again.
know, it's great to have you. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really looking forward to digging into your story because you and I share a fun word in the world called autoimmune, which is always a mystery and a journey. And oy.
I consider it my greatest gift.
Oh, lucky you. I haven't gotten there yet.
It took me 10 years. It's been 10 years, but I consider it my greatest gift.
That's funny because I'm at 8 now. So maybe in the next 2, but really it's about, I can see where it would be a gift if you finally found the root cause and the underlying pieces and you could manage it successfully and consistently. I've done a lot to manage it successfully, but it will throw me for loops on things that I can't even figure out. As well, I'm still on the restricted diet. I'm still only eating the things I always eat. What could it have been yesterday that today I'm
Right.
non-functional? But I can see how you would get there for it being a gift because it has changed how I live my life as it does.
And I'll explain it. It's from a lot of reasons
Yeah.
that I see it
Yeah.
as a gift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the beginning. Tell me a little bit about the forces that shaped you and how you became the person you were when our story begins in your mid 30s.
Okay. So the forces that shaped me. I probably on the outside, I looked like your average suburban white girl. Married parents, they're still married. My dad worked for General Electric for a while and then we moved and he had some job changes, but basically lived in suburbs and went to the public high school in that suburb and national merit scholar, straight A student,
Yeah.
etc. And I guess the force that made me that kid was probably the biggest forming factor, which was that I felt that I needed to achieve to get attention from my mother. And because of that, I lived my life in a way that always put achievement and accomplishment first.
Mm.
I think quite candidly, my mom was not a very happy mother, and she conveyed through her actions, if not, she didn't say these things but clear, that she felt trapped in being a suburban housewife with little kids and not having finished college and not having done the career thing. And so from the time I was very, very young, my mom was one of those 70s moms who talked about you can do anything you want and you can have a great career and you can do all the things I haven't gotten to do, which of course made me feel like she couldn't do those things and she was miserable because we existed.
Yeah.
But I ended up basically my currency in my family was to get straight A's, to be on the swim team, to do all those things that equate to suburban school kid success.
Yeah. And
And
let me jump in though. It
yeah,
also became, I'm guessing, and tell me if I'm wrong, it also became you can do all the things that I couldn't do. It almost became a prescription of you had to.
yes. And also I became extremely hyper independent.
Hmm.
So I post high school into college, left home, moved away. My parents live in Indiana. I moved to Boston, worked for a couple of years as a headhunter, and then went to law school in Boston and then became a lawyer. And ultimately moved to DC for 5 years in my first law job, and then ended up here in Miami. And in every relationship and in every job situation, et cetera, I felt I had to be the one who took on the brunt of the work, who was the leader, who was the one pulling all-nighters when something had to get done, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it really became a very busy life.
Yeah.
And at the same time as that was going on, I married somebody who was really emotionally difficult. Let's put it that way.
Mm.
And I continued to stay in that relationship for so long. I mean, I literally had a marriage counselor say to me, I've never met somebody who stayed in the kind of circumstance you were in and didn't leave. Like I stayed because I felt obligated to stay married because of course that was another of those marriage is hard work. You're supposed to work hard. And of course I was like tuned to work hard. So
Right.
I had to stay and do the right thing.
Michelle,
So
are you the oldest daughter as well? Are you the
yes,
oldest child? Because I'm listening to you going, check, check, check.
I am the oldest child in my family and the oldest grandchild in my mom's side of the family.
Yeah.
And they were the ones that we spent the most time with.
Yeah.
And thank God for me, I had grandparents who adored me. And I was not just the oldest, but by a lot of standards. I hate to say it out loud. It's not nice, but my cousins all resented me for it. So I guess I could say it the favored grandchild.
Sure.
And that gave me a place that I could be me and be loved for that.
Mm.
So I did get like that, right? But they weren't obviously there all the time. And so moving forward, hitting that point in my 30s, I'm married to this very difficult person. I'm a partner in a law firm. I have a partner who's very hard to work with. I walked away from that business, literally walked away with $30,000 in two contingency fee clients, which as a lawyer is like financial suicide,
Mhm.
but I had to. And I started my own practice and I dug in even deeper on working really hard and added to the work, just the work focus, community involvement, which was originally intended to be a way to meet people to bring in business to my law firm, but ultimately also became my escape from my marriage
Yeah.
because I was on committees, I was on the chamber board, I was at events all the time. I was running this local group that was working with the city on basically like a master planning process. So it became the kind of thing where I'd go to work all day and then I'd leave work and then I'd go home and have some dinner. Maybe I wouldn't. And then I'd be gone till 9, 10 o'clock at night.
Right.
And then my ex and I would take our boat out and be gone for the whole weekend. But while I was there during the week, I was literally never home. I was working all the time. And in 2008, I left him. I moved to our boat. I don't know if living on the boat might have had an impact on the autoimmune thing because boats have all kinds of toxic stuff.
Sure.
And I was living on a 40-foot power boat for 8 years. So, were there things on the boat that might have had some triggering impact? I don't know. Who knows?
Let's just start with mold.
Yeah, there was mold on the boat. I tested it at one point, and that was part of the reason ultimately I moved off the boat.
Yeah.
But there was a place where there was a leak through the screws for a cleat. And I started noticing my clothes got wet in the back of the closet. And I was like, where's that coming from? And I found that. And there was mold in that wall, like behind all the soft goods kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, long story short, I did that. And it was during the time I was living on the boat. I had had a really burned out period in my law practice. I hadn't realized it as burned out at the time. I felt like I was just doing everything for everyone. I disengaged in a big way. Didn't respond to a lot of my friends' phone calls for a while. I was just like really detached.
Mm.
And that really detached lasted for a while. And then I realized I need to change something. And I was also at the same time, and I didn't connect the dots. This was actually a little earlier. I had some really weird brain foggy stuff going on.
Yeah.
I had received a phone call one day and I had a really good note taking system in my computer. So normally, if a phone call came in, lawyers bill their time. So I would open up a phone note, I would click the timer, I'd take notes on the call, I'd put the information into a case file or whatever. And that was all set up and I was using it very consistently. This man calls one day, and it's clear from the context of what he's saying that we had spoken
Yeah.
and that he was following up on some things. He told me he'd get information about things and whatever. I had no memory of talking to him. None, like 0, like it never happened. And I got on my computer and I look, and sure enough, not only had I spoken to him, I'd spoken to him for almost an hour and I had 5 pages of notes.
Yeah. And this was all just gone from your brain.
Gone, had no idea. And so that was a point where I was like, whoa, like I was scared, right? I'm thinking, am I getting early Alzheimer's? Do I have something like really wrong with me?
Mm.
And of course, do I go to the doctor? Oh, hell no. I knew that stress could cause that kind of thing. And I knew that one way I could deal with stress was to start running again. And so I started exercising
Right.
and eating better, and I lost some weight and I felt better and it went away. And that would happen. Like I'd see these weird things and then I'd change my diet, I'd exercise, I'd feel better. And then in 2014, I went to the hospital in the middle of the night because I thought I had appendicitis. I had this incredible pain. They sent me away from the emergency room with a sort of tentative diagnosis of gallstones.
Mhm.
And again, not a girl who goes to the doctor here.
Right.
Gallstones, lifestyle disease. I can deal with that. I'm just going to change how I eat, right?
Right.
And at that point, I went on a Beachbody program and I lost 35 pounds. Within that following year, I was at my high school weight. I was in the best shape I've been in my entire life. I felt amazing. Everything's cool. The pain went away, never came back. So I'm like, okay, cool. Everything's good. And the reason they had diagnosed gallstones, they did an ultrasound and didn't see anything, but they had looked at liver enzymes and said, these liver enzymes are really off. And it's consistent with gallstones.
Sure.
What they didn't tell me at that time was it's also consistent with an autoimmune condition called PBC.
Mm.
And so a year later, I go to my doctor for a UTI, and he says, you haven't had blood testing done for a while. Why don't we run a typical blood panel? And I get a phone call. This was like on a Friday. He calls me on Monday and he says, I got your blood test results. Can you come in to talk to me about them? And I'm like,
All right. That's never a good
whoa,
thing.
like, that's like, am I dying? Right?
Yeah,
Like,
that's never a good thing because usually they'll just give them to you right there on the phone. You're fine.
yeah, like who does this? So I go there and I have a conversation with my doctor and he says, well, because you listed me as your primary, I got the records from the hospital visit. And then when I went to look at this file, I noticed they put this record in your file. I hadn't even, apparently he wasn't even aware of it except that it was there.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I'm concerned because these elevated liver enzymes that were in your hospital visit notes are now twice as high as they were a year ago. And they were high then, now they're really high.
That's the wrong direction. Yeah.
We need to get you to see a gastroenterologist, find out what's going on. So I go to see somebody. That was ultimately what led me to a hepatologist and knowing what was wrong and the whole thing. And separately from that, and having nothing to do with autoimmunity really, I have a friend here in Miami who is a naturopath and who has cured a lot of cancer with nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
He used to practice in California, and he's done some work with people with autoimmunity. And so I knew that there were a lot of things you could do with lifestyle. And I also knew that the doctors basically tell you there's no cure for this. And We hope that you can get it into remission with the medications. However, if there's damage, it's done.
Right.
But let's hope we can get you moving forward to be in remission. But, what I ultimately did, I did a raw foods diet for probably 8 or 10 months. And then I did the Amy Myers autoimmune protocol diet,
Mhm.
which has a lot of elimination aspect to it, and discovered I am really, really allergic to gluten.
Yep.
And I took the drug that they have, which is not steroids. It's called ursodiol. And what I learned is it acts like Drano in your bile ducts.
Ooh.
So your liver creates cholesterol, and if you have this disease I have, your bile ducts get kind of misshapen, and the cholesterol clogs them, and then the bile gets stuck in your liver, and it's highly caustic. So then it causes liver damage, and you end up with cirrhosis.
Okay.
In the long term, like that end stages of the diseases, you end up with cirrhosis, and you will either die or need a transplant. So I started doing all these things. I mean, lots of things, right? I did the exercise, I changed my diet, I went to a health coaching school for almost a year to learn about holistic health and to learn about stress reduction and habit formation and all those things because I wanted to be able to help myself.
Yeah.
And there was a point after that was all done and I changed my lifestyle and the drug was working. And lucky for me, I have learned it is actually possible to reverse the damage. I've gone from stage 2 to stage 0 of this disease with what I've done. But there's also, I just realized like my entire demeanor had changed, where before I was sort of at a like level 10 anxiety, stress, constantly thinking about the work stuff, constantly talking about the
Yeah.
stress or the conflict or I went from being that person to someone that now I have a really close friend who literally refers to me as his calm. Like I am like the calm in the storm
Yeah.
because I've changed how everything is. And that's why I say it's like my greatest gift
Yeah.
because it allowed me to really go from a point where I was always stressed out, chronically inflamed. My ex and I used to buy giant bottles of Advil, like those big, like
Yeah.
1,000 pill
Yeah.
bottles. And I would be popping Advil like candy every day.
Mm.
And I had migraine headaches all the time and I had skin problems and all these things. And nobody ever said to me, how much water do you drink?
Right.
Or,
What are you
you
eating?
know,
Or
any
how
of
are you
that,
relaxing?
nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so through all of this, I really learned a lot that has allowed me not just to change my lifestyle in a way that has helped with this disease, but that has changed my entire mindset, my entire way of responding to things.
Mm.
I don't respond to things the way I used to at all now.
Yeah.
I used to take things very personally. I'd blame myself. And now I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
it's if somebody is upset about something, I can deal with it very easily. Where before I would personalize it and I'd ruminate about it and I'd be very stressed about it and uncomfortable about how to deal with it.
Yeah.
And all of that I think really has come from these many different things that I've done over time that have helped with this.
Well, and if you look backwards, there's not only your conditioning and the habits and patterns you picked up from home of achievement and always going and never stopping, relaxing is bad, all of those things. There's
Mhm.
that, but then there's also your body, which is on attack all the time. So I understand what you're saying because I've experienced a lot of the same thing of going from
Yeah.
that really high strung, absolute type A, like climb every mountain, attack every challenge, never say never,
Right, and feel like everything's your responsibility, and
yes.
if other people can't do it as well as you think you can do it, then you have to do
You
it,
better just do it.
and,
Yeah.
all of that, and you can't. One of the things I've learned that I think probably one of the biggest things that was huge for me was understanding that it's okay to ask for help.
Mm.
because I was expected when I grew up, I really, whether it was stated to me or it's something I picked up, because you know how kids are, they pick these things up
Yeah.
and then it's a belief. And the belief, it could be completely invalid and never what your parents intended for you to think,
Right.
but
Right.
it's what happened. And so I, as a little kid, like I said, I became very, very hyper independent, even as a really little kid. And as I got older, it just got worse.
Mm.
And then somebody said something to me once, and I thought it was a really awesome way of expressing this, that it was very meaningful to me, which was that when someone is offering you help, they're offering to connect with you.
Yeah.
They want to be your friend. They want to have a relationship that's give and take.
It's a
And
gift.
when you reject that, you're rejecting them and you're rejecting their offer of friendship and connection,
Yeah.
and you're isolating yourself.
Yes. And
And
yet in your brain, you're seeing help as weakness.
yes, and I don't want to impose on people,
Mhm.
right? You know,
I do.
sometimes you're taught that, or you pick up, like I said, that if you ask for help, you're imposing on someone else.
Yep.
And therefore, you shouldn't do that. You're
Yeah.
supposed to take care of everything yourself and be the strong one and whatever. One of the things that came out of all of this is I do something where I teach people about time.
Yeah.
And the reason I do that is it's not because it's about time. It kind of is. So the concept I have is that when you know how to live your life in a way where you're at your best, you have great energy, you have focus, you're not fatigued, you're connected with people and able to generate those relationships where there's a give and take. You get more out of every minute of the time you're spending doing things, and
Yeah.
you're going to get a lot more done in a lot less time.
Yeah.
And you're going to have the opportunity to have joy in your day everywhere you go.
Yeah.
I looked one day and I said, when I was looking back at that before I realized I was burned out me.
Mhm.
And I said, what did I think was going on then? What was in my head? Because I didn't know I was burned out.
Right.
And I realized that the first thing I ever did to buy a course to teach myself a professional skill was a time management program. And it was because when I was at the worst of my burnout phase and I was spinning my wheels, not getting as much done, I thought I had a time management issue. And I learned a couple things in that time management program that were helpful, but most of what I learned was not about time management at all. It was about how to live your life in a way that you get the best time in the time you're spending.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of it too is about alignment, right?
Yeah.
When you're in that life that doesn't quite fit,
Hmm.
but you've built it and it's yours and you've worked really hard. And so you want to continue to work really hard.
Right.
Everything is hard work. And hard work feels like hard work. It feels like it takes longer because it's hard.
And sometimes it does take longer. And I mean, there's science behind this.
Hmm. Yeah.
If, for instance, one of the things I talk to people about is how to avoid what I refer to as time sucks. I have a character that I use that's time suck ninja. And my goal for my clients is that they all become a time suck ninja. And when you're a time suck ninja, you can cut out the time sucks and you can protect yourself.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I read that really struck me was that if you are in a flow state activity, which a lot of us who have kind of intellectual capital types of professions like doctors, lawyers, accountants, etc.,
Hmm.
right? You need to be in flow state to be able to focus on things and to think things through and to write and all that stuff.
Yeah.
If you're interrupted, you lose your flow state for about 15 minutes. One interruption, one text, one email pops into your screen and takes your focus away from that, and you're literally destroying the next 15 minutes of productivity.
Yeah,
You have to get back to that state, it takes about 15 minutes.
sure. Well,
So,
and two, though, again, when you're not in alignment with the life that suits you and fits you best,
yes.
you're much more likely to take that interruption as an eject button
Oh,
and
for sure.
not go back, or again, it's hard work to go back. But
Exactly.
what you're talking about with flow state is really much easier to find and to achieve when you are in alignment with what it is you're meant to do, you're best suited to do, your talents are best used for. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and so
Absolutely.
just thinking about the difference of in your life when things were hard and when things were easy, sometimes we discount the things that are easy because they're quote unquote too easy. They're not work.
Right. But
And
sometimes they're
yet,
easy because they're what's natural for you and what flows best,
right,
and just what you enjoy and you get
sustain.
into.
Yeah. Hi, we'll get back to the conversation in just a minute. We are about halfway through this examination of midlife transition. And I want you to know that the Big 4 doesn't stop when the episode ends. I've put together an email series that's like a companion guide to this midlife terrain. It's got stories and reflections and prompts to help you make sense of your own transition, wherever you are in that process. Think of it like notes from a friend who's walked the same path and has some hard won insights to share. You can get that companion guide at thebig40.com. Click subscribe right in the main navigation. All right, back to the show.
The other thing is that I discovered was in the burnout place, you stop seeing what I call the sparks that light you up.
Hmm.
Whatever our career is, most of us didn't just randomly end up in some job. Some people do, but a lot of us have chosen
Right.
to go into a particular kind of career because there was something we liked about it.
Hmm.
We love to read, we love to write, we love numbers, we love science, whatever it is,
Yep.
there's something about that that we've chosen and that we were excited about. And when we started, we probably felt pretty good about it and we enjoyed it. And you hit a point, and I think there's two things that happen to people. One of them is that they get promoted beyond the fun part. So for some people, it's like they love the job until they hit the point where now they're the manager and they're spending more time dealing with warring factions of people than they are doing the actual work that they enjoyed. And some of it is that you get burned out and then you literally lose your capacity to engage and enjoy and see that positive side and see that fun part. That's huge. So, one thing that I work when I work with people, I always help them with that first.
Mm,
And it's about finding clarity in who you are, like you said, in alignment.
yeah.
Who are you? What lights you up? And how do you get these, I call it sparks of joy? Like it might be something really little. It might be that you accomplished something, that you got to see a finished product and it's pretty cool. You hit send, it made you feel good. You saw the look on somebody's face when they got it, when you talked to them about something. There's so many things. Like I love to teach people,
Mm,
and when I teach people and I see that aha moment, that to me is like one of the most wonderful things that I could do.
sure.
And it's a through line. What we find is that we have through lines in our lives. It doesn't matter what job you're doing. I could be working in a car wash and I could teach people,
Yeah. Yeah.
or I could be working in as a lawyer or as a coach or in all kinds of different capacities. And one thing I realized when I was looking at these things and kind of trying to figure it all out was that in every job I've ever had, I've mentored people and I've taught people. It's been part of what I've done, and it's part of who I am. And I think for me, that's something that lights me up. For other people, it's different things.
Yeah.
So we work on finding that, you
Well, I
know?
think the other thing too is going back to your story specifically, there are clues along the way. And a
Mhm.
lot of times when we're in those years of hard work and building a career and building a life, we're so focused on the things that we think we're supposed to achieve or that we think we're supposed to be doing that we miss some of the more subtle or nuanced signs, some of
Yeah.
the lower volume signs,
Right.
until we've pushed so far that our body cries uncle and says, "You're done. I need your attention now. You've not been listening." And I think that
Yeah.
really was a lot of your story, right? You worked so hard and you overworked as a coping mechanism.
Yeah, for
Right,
sure. For
right?
sure. And
Um,
one of the things I realized, and I'm sure, if you have people on in your audience who are people who've gone through rough family circumstances and they are overachievers. I know one thing I ran into that was really big that I realized I was like, wow, I had no idea about this was that my achievement professionally was what held me together while I was having this very difficult home life. And when I left my ex and I was free of that, I fell apart for a while. I
right,
mean, I fell apart. That was when the burnout hit bottom.
right.
And it wasn't until then. And I think it was because that was a point where I recognized now it's safe for me to fall apart. Now it's okay for me to let go and just heal. And it took a while.
There's that, and then there's also the concept of, I'm thinking of the way the Romans used to build those arched bridges with just stones and no connecting things, no screws, things
Mhm.
like that. And once you take a piece out,
The whole thing falls down.
you've been holding yourself together with
Yeah.
with that effort and with that trying, and once you take that piece out, it's not only is it safe to kind of fall apart, but now the structure that you've built doesn't have, it's not shored up from every direction. So
Right.
so it's not for a lot of people, and I was one of them. You move one piece and it's like, okay, well, now I'm out of that bad relationship. Well, now I'm being escorted to the front door of my job, and now my friends are turning their backs on me, and it dominoes. And I just spoke to someone this afternoon who will be joining the podcast, and it was the same thing for her. It was like dominoes. It was like bad thing after bad thing after bad thing after bad thing, until she was calling it rock bottom, and you're
Yeah.
calling it burnout, and those things can mean the same thing. They can mean
Of
different
course.
things, right? But your body finally cried uncle. But also you said that had you been a little bit more attentive from a bigger picture perspective, you would have known that you had some physical stuff that was kind of funky along the way that you just thought, that must be normal.
Right.
And you had
And
grandparents who also were dealing with what today we would call autoimmune issues.
exactly, and I have extensive family history. So, on my dad's side of the family, my grandmother had lupus. Her daughter, my aunt, had lupus and I believe
Mm,
Raynaud's. She had like 3 different kinds of autoimmune
yeah,
conditions. Her daughter has lupus. So, in that side of the family, there are all these people with lupus.
right.
And on my mom's side of the family, there's a lot of depression and that like mental health stuff.
Mhm.
And there's also gout. A lot of the women in the family have had issues with fibroids and stuff like that. My grandmother had thyroid issues and had to take Synthroid.
Right,
So I'm sure like she may have had Hashimoto's. They weren't calling it that then.
right.
She probably started taking that in the 70s. So there's a lot of autoimmunity. Clearly, there are genes that can be turned on in
Yeah,
me. And so the philosophy that I think makes sense in that medical realm is the epigenetics model of what happens with these things. We have these genes. Some people don't have any of these genes and they're never going to get an autoimmune disease.
right,
Lots of people do, and they'll only get it if the gene gets turned on.
right,
Well, how does the gene get turned on? Too much stress, environmental things, things in your diet, whatever it is for you.
right.
People will say to me like, what did you do? The first time that I had a fibroscan, which is this ultrasound they do for the liver thing I have, and it's used to measure the rigidity of your liver tissue to see if there's fibrosis or cirrhosis. and it's how they stage the disease. So the first time I had that, my score was 8.2 and it was stage 2. And a year later, it had gone down like 1.5 points. And the woman who did the scan looks at the machine and she looks at me. She did it again to see if she'd gotten a good reading. And then she just looks at me and she says, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
Because they don't see that very
Well,
often,
and
if ever.
as far as she was concerned, that wasn't possible.
Right. It's funny because after 2 or 3 experiences like that where each year it got better, I had a conversation with my doctor, and it wasn't her who said this isn't possible. It was actually her predecessor. I said, when I was diagnosed, I was told that if there was damage, that it wouldn't improve, and that the best I could hope for was to keep it the same.
Mm.
And she said, honestly, she said, mostly we do tell people that, and we tell them that because virtually no one does what you've done.
Yeah.
It's really hard for people to make these major life changes. And I'm like, wasn't that hard for me? I was scared I was gonna die. Like,
I agree with
you
you.
know what I'm saying? I mean, I was right down that rabbit hole learning all the stuff
Yeah.
and changing a lot because I was like, "Okay, I gotta figure this out."
Yeah, I agree with you because people say to me, and I have followed that autoimmune protocol diet for
Mhm.
probably 6 or 7 years now. And that first year I was on the strict elimination phase, and I've added things along the way, but now I actually have a much better sense of what I'm reacted to and not reactive to
Right.
because you're not just always in the reaction
Y
state, which is what I probably lived my life before I was 40 in.
right.
But people
Yeah,
say to me,
chronic inflammation was your normal and you
"Yeah,
didn't know any different.
yeah,
So that's just what it
yeah."
was, and
And people say to me, "Oh god, how can you eat? Like what can you eat?" And it's just normal for me now. And if I were not doing this, I wouldn't be as stable or as steady as I am. And even though I haven't yet found the root cause and the thing that's underneath everything, it's like these are variables that I can choose to take off the table so that
right.
I'm not making myself worse on a regular basis.
To me, it's like not eating gluten is a no-brainer. I
Yeah,
know it makes me sick. And the funny thing for me with that was that until I did an elimination diet, I had no symptoms that were ones that you would think meant anything.
right.
So, and I learned later that my doctor told me 40% of the people who have what I have also have celiac disease.
Mhm.
Now, I've never tested positive for celiac, but they test for an antibody. And as far as I know, they've never done a test when I wasn't already off gluten.
Right. Right. And it's not worth eating the gluten to get the test.
Exactly. And what
Same
my doctor
here.
told me, she said you'd have to eat gluten for 2 months to get enough antibody for us to know that you had celiac. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing that. Like, why would I do
Imagine
that to myself?
how sick you would be for 2 months just to prove that you do or don't have the thing that you know that
Well,
makes you
right.
sick.
I would probably lose the immediate, like the extreme, like now I get like bad intestinal
Yep,
cramping
yep,
and gas and all that. That never ever happened in the past before I knew I had this.
right.
But I'm guessing if I started eating gluten, that would
Yeah,
happen.
yeah, yeah. It's so interesting these stories of uncovering mysteries because it not only was about your health, which it
Yeah,
was centrally
sure.
about your
Of
health,
course.
but it also came with, I'm going to describe it as a personality change, right? Your whole way of approaching life has
In
changed.
in a way, and the funniest part of it is for me, my life has happened in many different places.
Mhm.
So I'm not somebody who's lived in the same place my whole life, and people know me from when I was a child and that kind of thing where I am now. People who knew me in like high school and college see me and they're like, "You haven't changed since high school." Like they remember the person I was back then really is a lot more like the person I am now.
Oh, interesting.
And what happened with me, I think, was like law school and working as a lawyer and the experience of this troublesome marriage and things like that had a big impact
Yeah.
on my personality and my level of stress and that sort of thing.
Mm.
So, people who met me when I was a stressed out lawyer who was on the brink of this wouldn't recognize me today
Right.
in a sense that they're, "What are you on? Because I wanna be like that,"
Yeah.
right? They're like, they see you're so calm and
Yeah.
like, your whole demeanor is different.
Yeah. There's a
And
softness now.
that's something people notice
Yeah.
who met me when I moved here. For instance, I live in Miami and I moved to Miami as a lawyer.
Right.
I'd been practicing like 5 years when I came here. So anybody who knows me in Miami, who met me in those early years, would know that person who was
Right.
high driving and always stressed and always on and
Yeah. Yeah.
very different.
Yeah. Yeah. And so tell me about for you life as a healthier, softer, happier, more flowful person. What is that like?
Oh, so much better. So much better.
I kind of set you up for
And
that.
yeah, I mean, it says, so here's the thing. Like I said, in the past, if something went badly, I was very fixed mindset.
Mhm.
I've worked very hard to learn not to be like that. I would take things very personally. I would ruminate on them and I wouldn't handle things well because of it. I
Yeah.
mean, if I would look back at things about interactions with people and stuff like that from 20 years ago, I think I would probably handle things very differently now.
Yeah.
And learning those skills was incredible. Like I said, I mean, an incredible gift
Yeah.
having that. And that all kind of came at the same time. Like when I had the hospital event and then I did the Beachbody program, I signed up as a coach for the discount. And they provide their coaches. Well, now they've shut down the coach network, but before that, they had a lot of personal development type of education for their coaches.
Mm,
And as a lawyer, I was never exposed to that stuff.
right. Not in that
So,
form.
not at all.
Oh, not at all. Oh, okay.
No, not at all.
All
So
right.
there was 0. Like, even today, when you look at, like, the wellness education that lawyers get generally, if you went to the ABA or you went to your state bar association or whatever, to this day, a lot of them won't give continuing education credit unless it's a substance abuse prevention program.
Oh, interesting.
So if it's not, they don't care. They're like, "Oh, okay." They're worried about the impression of the public information out there about lawyers committing suicide, and lawyers have a 6 times higher rate of suicide than the general population.
Wow. I didn't know
They're
that.
more than twice as likely to be alcoholics or drug addicts. A lot of stuff comes with that
Yeah.
heavy responsibility and heavy workload, and I know that firms are providing more now, but there's still a stigma attached. So firms might provide the opportunity to do certain things, but most people don't take advantage of it.
Right. Right. Oh, Michelle, it's been so lovely hearing your story and I thank you for being so generous with it and letting us behind the curtains and really seeing how this transition happened and how you survived it and what
Yeah.
it looks like on the other side. I thank you so much for being here with me today.
Well, thank you. It's so good to see you again.
Likewise. All right, friend. Here we are talking about burnout again. Because I know you heard Michelle's story and thought, okay, sure, but my burnout is different. Mine's just a busy season and it will calm down after this project, this kid phase, this year, this fill in the blank. And I wouldn't be your friend if I didn't gently suggest a reframe in your thinking about burnout. If burnout keeps showing up in your life, maybe it's not the problem you need to solve. Maybe it's a sign you've been trying to ignore. What struck me about Michelle's story, aside from being a fellow autoimmune warrior, is that she did not burn out because she was careless or disorganized or bad at managing her time. Quite the opposite. She burned out because all of the strategies that once kept her safe stopped working. Achievement, hyperindependence, pushing through, taking responsibility for everything and everyone. Those things can carry you really far, and they look a lot like success for a long time, right up until they start quietly costing you your health, your energy, and even your sense of self. But here's the part I really want you to hear, because burnout is rarely loud, at least at first. It's going to show up as a whisper. It's going to be brain fog that you explain away, or chronic inflammation, or low level health issues that you just sort of normalize. It might show up as exhaustion that you try to solve with coffee and grit. And so many of us don't realize how much we're asking our bodies to carry until they say no. And I love that this conversation included the concept of alignment, because when you are aligned with the life you're living, effort feels different. Things can still be challenging, of course, but they do not feel quite so draining. You are not constantly pushing yourself uphill. You don't need to grit your teeth just to get through a normal day. An old mentor of mine used to say, life feels like it's on a roller skate. And to this day, I use that as a unit of measurement of alignment. How is my life feeling these days? Do I feel like I'm on a skate, or do I feel like I'm mucking through mud? Because when you are misaligned, everything takes more energy than it should. Work feels heavier, focus is harder to come by, interruptions feel like relief instead of disruption, and burnout shows up faster, not because you're weak, but because your system is working overtime to sustain something that no longer fits. And the fact that Michelle named this as looking like a time management problem was brilliant, because sometimes, many times, many of us try to fix burnout by optimizing the wrong life. But better systems, better tools, better discipline, they're not going to get us far without stopping to ask whether the life we're living is asking too much of us. Or maybe it just doesn't fit anymore. We've been talking about that in some recent episodes as well. When I was reflecting on my conversation with Andrea McGinty in episode 139, alignment was really more about values and self-trust, and noticing when the life you're living no longer reflects what actually matters to you. And there was a strong current of internal authority there, of realizing that the rules you've been following are outdated or borrowed, and that alignment requires choosing yourself, even if it disrupts other people's expectations. But in this conversation with Michelle, alignment shows up first in the body. Her misalignment wasn't existential or values based, it was physiological. Her nervous system and immune system were in constant overdrive long before she consciously questioned whether her life fit her. In her case, alignment was not optional or philosophical, it was purely survival. Her body stepped in because her mind was not ready to. And I think what's interesting and very much Big 4 here is that both of those paths lead to the same place from different doors. Andrea came to alignment by questioning the story she had been living, and Michelle got there because her body refused to continue carrying the cost of the story that she was living. So one was a cognitive and emotional reckoning, and the other one was more somatic. And some people, I think, feel misalignment as a quiet dissatisfaction or a loss of meaning, but other people feel it as anxiety or inflammation or exhaustion or illness. And one's not better or worse than the other, they're just different messengers. And I think there's also a timing difference worth pointing out here because Andrea seemed to have the space to choose alignment, but Michelle was forced into it. And let me be clear, that doesn't mean Michelle did anything wrong. It just means that her particular wiring and history and coping strategies delayed that conscious conversation until her body demanded it. And I, for one, live in Michelle's camp way more so than Andrea's. My body did something very similar to me. But the connection between the two conversations is that alignment is not a one size fits all experience. For some people, it's this is not who I am anymore. And for other people, it's I can't live like this anymore. And both are absolutely valid. And more importantly, no matter which one you may be experiencing, both are invitations to tune into what's going on inside of you. But let's circle back to burnout just for a minute to close the loop. I think it's important to note here that burnout is not an opportunity for you to rest so that you can go back to the same life and commitments and pace that you had before. I think it's more an opportunity for you to look honestly at where your energy flows, what feels natural, what feels good, and to really start thinking about what might not fit you anymore, what might not be for you anymore, what gives you energy, and what, in Michelle's words, is a time suck. And I think these years around turning 40 are often when this kind of reflection and introspection becomes kind of unavoidable. Not because we did anything wrong. In fact, we've probably worked really, really hard to do everything right. But this time for reflection and introspection happens because we've outgrown the systems we built to survive the previous chapters of our lives. And we're turning a page here. So we're going to need some new systems. We're going to need new ways of being. And so if this is resonating for you at all, I want you to take one thing away from this very clearly. You do not need to wait for a diagnosis, a collapse, or a rock bottom moment to make changes. Trust me, I wish I hadn't. And though Michelle called it a gift, objectively, it would have been easier if she got there without the health issues. So, if you are still in a place where you're looking for permission, I'm here to give it to you. I give you permission to slow down before your body forces you to. I give you permission to question whether working harder is actually the right answer. And I give you permission to redefine success so it doesn't require constant self sacrifice. Because Michelle's story illustrates that your body is part of the conversation, whether you invite it or not. And it shows that there is a softer, more sustainable way to live that still honors your intelligence, your desires, your ambition, and your capacity. In fact, it might honor it even more than how you're currently living. So, if listening to this conversation stirred something in you, pay attention to that because the stirring is the sign. The stirring is the information. And many times, noticing is the first step towards making this transition a little easier than the ones like me who came before you had it. And that's my whole reason for being here to shine a light on this transition that nobody warned us about. All right. Next time, you are going to meet my friend IRL, Nathan Carroll. Nathan made a decision at 40 to leave a professional situation that he had worked hard for and put a lot on the line for, but turned out to be not the right fit. So he had to pivot and figure out what's best for me as a person, as a dad, as a human. And in a really interesting twist, a struggle in his next professional endeavor brought to the forefront a childhood diagnosis that it was time to take seriously again. I can't wait to share that one with you. So I'll see you next time. The Big 4L podcast is produced and presented by Savoir Faire Marketing Communications.